Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Omnipod. Take Omnipod Dash out for a spin with a no-commitment free 30-day trial. By the only ultra-rapid-acting inhaled insulin, and by Dexcom, keeping you in control with an integrated system for diabetes management.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, a behind-the-scenes look at the evolution of stem cells as a functional cure for type 1. The Human Trial is a new documentary that follows the process, and the filmmakers are incredibly optimistic about what they've seen.
I am not about selling hope. Why would I need to sell hope? I don't. You're right. I'm a journalist. I'm not trying to get more money for a clinical trial. I'm not trying to recruit patients. What I saw showed me that the science is working.
That's director Lisa Hepner, who also lives with type 1. She says she knows to be careful about the cure in 5 years kind of statements, but is convinced this is the real deal. We talk about the film, the process, the science, and a lot more. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I'm your host, Stacey Sims, and I'm always so glad to have you here. You know, we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. And this year, there's been a lot more talk about stem cell research, right? In terms of helping actual people who are in these studies, not just hypotheticals. I think there's been more talk than there has been in a long time, and it's very exciting. But it is still, even though I mentioned there are actual people doing this, for most of us, it's a very abstract idea still. Right? So when is that going to change? My guest this week has been following the story at one company, ViaCyte, for a very long time. She started on this project to make a documentary in 2011, started filming in 2014, and Lisa Hepner and I first talked in 2016. She came on the podcast, and at the time, she and a lot of other people, frankly, thought this could be wrapped up, the documentary and the research, in 2 to 3 years. Obviously, that is not the case, and there is still a very long way to go. If you are new to the podcast, we've done several episodes just in the last couple of months talking about these different companies, Cernova a couple weeks ago, ViaCyte earlier this year, and I've reported on many stem cell studies during my In the News episodes that air weekly as well. So I would urge you to check that out. I'm also going to link up the episode that Lisa and I did back in 2016, just for context, and if you want to see what people were saying about this science back then. And she goes a little bit more into detail about her husband as a co-director. And during that first interview, we talk more about the documentary film process and her background in the news business. We touch on that a little bit this time around, but it's more about the science. You know, and just for perspective, I recently had a meetup. I'm very lucky. I'm able to do some meetups in my local area. And I met with 2 other families. Coincidentally, they both had 17-year-old sons. My son is 17. My son was diagnosed right before he turned 2. Their sons had been diagnosed in the last 18 months or so. And we had very different experiences, obviously, in terms of technology. And I was explaining that when Benny was diagnosed, you know, the doctor said we would have an artificial pancreas in 5 or 6 years. They were talking about hybrid closed loops, you know, pump systems and CGMs that communicate, which are now called automated insulin delivery systems. And of course, that took a little longer. It took about 13 years. But he is using one. And these families are starting out, not right away, right? Not in the hospital, but starting out very quickly within a couple of months with AID systems. And that's how I look at the stem cell research. It's not coming quickly. It cannot come quickly enough, but it is coming. And there will be families down the road that will have access to this in a way that is almost incomprehensible now. At least that's my hope. This looks like a really powerful documentary. Here's the first 30 seconds of the trailer.
There's a lot of unknowns, and I think it's the unknowns that are terrifying. And it's me. It's me on that operating table.
We're developing the bioartificial pancreas that can potentially cure type 1 diabetes.
It's become a joke that the cure is always 5 years away. But if it's so close, what is taking so long? Do you feel guilty that the cure is always 5 years away?
I don't feel guilty. I feel hopeful.
I will link the whole thing up, the trailer, at diabetes-connections.com. As I do with every episode, there are show notes, so you can click through and get more there. My interview with Lisa Hepner in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Omnipod. And when you're deciding on a brand of insulin pump, there are a lot of things to think about, especially if you've never used a pump before. It can seem overwhelming. There are a lot of choices, and you want to make the right decision. That's why I am so excited to tell you about the Omnipod Dash free trial. Curious about trying an insulin pump or seeing what life without tubes is all about? You can now try Omnipod Dash free for 30 days. The trial comes with no commitment or obligation. Not right for you? No problem. Terms and conditions apply. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Omnipod logo for full safety risk information and free trial terms and conditions. Also visit omnipod.com/diabetesconnections. Lisa, welcome back. I am so excited to talk to you. It's been a while. A lot has happened.
A lot has happened in how many years was it?
We last talked in 2016.
Wow. About halfway through making of the movie.
Yeah. So bring us up to date. I know there's a lot of information that we're going to try to share today, but as we're talking, the movie is about to be released when this episode goes live. It will be out there. How are you doing right now?
I am a little sleep deprived, but very excited, nervous, almost surreal because this has been such a very long process. And I just want people, honestly, to respond to the film and to see the larger picture that diabetes is not a benign disease. It needs to be cured. And by the way, we can do it. This whole time it's beyond exciting, I guess is the word.
You know, when we first spoke years ago, I thought this was going to be a documentary more about the medical side of things. And I'm sure it is. But in my mind, it was going to be clinical. We'd be looking at a lot of test tubes, with scientists. When I looked at the previews for the movie, there is a lot of emotion in this. I'm not sure why I did not expect that because it is a very emotional issue. But can you talk a little bit about some of the stories that we will see?
Yes, absolutely. So when I spoke to you in 2016, we did not have access to the clinical trial patients. So I was really doing the story more from the perspective of the researchers because I simply didn't have access to the patients. I'd always wanted access to the patients, but the trial was taking longer. And I wanted to film a trial that might actually show efficacy. I didn't want to shoot the phase of the trial that was just safety because it just wasn't going to be dramatic. So that made us wait. And we did wait. And it wasn't until 2017, in September of 2017, that we started filming with patient one, which is Marin Badger. And I didn't realize how emotional it was going to be. I didn't realize how challenging the trial was going to be on the patients. I didn't realize myself how invasive the protocol was. I mean, all for good reason, but I didn't know that. And so the emotional roller coaster that the patients rode of the hope, despair roller coaster was very real. And I think because I have type 1 diabetes and because I'm so empathetic, the patients felt very comfortable opening up and saying, yeah, this is what's going on. I also think they probably should have had some sort of therapist helping them throughout this process because it was kind of intense. But yeah, the emotional side of it, I'm glad that you see that. It's a very emotional film. It's emotional for me, having type 1 and working with my husband and having my son in the film. It's emotional for the patients and it was emotional for the researchers. This biotech company, look at this film and they're crying watching it.
It's been a pretty remarkable 6 or 7 months for the perception of this kind of research. And I say that because obviously this has all been going on for a very long time, but the news coverage, the studies that are coming out, I said in a recent episode, it seems like stem cell research is having a moment. We talked to Cernova a couple of weeks ago. We talked to ViaCyte earlier this year. And I feel like every week I'm doing a story on this kind of functional cure research. Can you tell us a little bit about where the research stands? I mean, we can talk about where the documentary ends, kind of, but you've been right in the lab for all of this time.
It's an amazing moment for science. It's an amazing moment for stem cell research. The promise of stem cell research is probably going on 15 years now. You recall, like in the early aughts, this is what stem cell research can do. This is the myriad of diseases that it can cure or treat. And we were all very psyched about it. And then the research started, and it was taking longer than we thought, which is what research does. It always takes longer than you think. And now it's bearing fruit in a really big way. I'm not going to speak necessarily to all of the stem cell breakthroughs. I'll let a researcher from a think tank probably speak better to that. But I can speak knowledgeably about type 1 diabetes and the fact that ViaCyte and Vertex, which is the lab out of Harvard, Doug Melton's lab, that they are proving efficacy in their patients with this programmed stem cell line is kind of amazing. And both have achieved some really, really cool things. I've always been intrigued by stem cell research, and I've always thought that this could be the functional cure. I didn't believe it until I started filming it. And one of the best moments for me was realizing that one donated microscopic embryo from an IVF clinic in San Diego created a stem cell line that can cure everyone on this planet with insulin-dependent diabetes. One day 5 blastocyst.
It is amazing to think about something like that. That was possibly going to be discarded.
Absolutely. And this family, couple, single, I'm not sure who, but they decided to donate to science. They ticked that box, donate to science. And otherwise, it would probably have been destroyed. It's really a miracle, but is it a miracle? I don't know. Science really isn't about miracles, but I was a little gobsmacked.
One of the things that is tough, and we mentioned this when we first talked, and you're very realistic. But one of the things that's really interesting to me is listening to you talk about this as a possibility. You live with type 1. You've lived with it since you were a young adult. You are not a pie in the sky Pollyanna. You are a documentary maker. You're a news person. When you start talking about things like this is going to work, this is a cure, we could cure everybody with type 1, I get a little nervous, to be honest with you, Lisa. We worry so much in this community about over expectations. Do you find yourself second guessing when you're saying things like that? Or should we kind of just let ourselves go along with you?
The potential is there to find a functional cure for type 1 diabetes in 5 years. You can put me on the record for saying that. I am not about selling hope. Why would I need to sell hope? I don't. You're right. I'm a journalist. I'm not trying to get more money for a clinical trial. I'm not trying to recruit patients. What I saw showed me that the science is working. But what is it missing? It's missing consistent funding. It's missing consistent regulatory responses. It is missing mandated collaboration between companies where perhaps profit isn't the only motive. This is not pie in the sky. Look at what we did with COVID-19. Mm-hmm. Look at what we did with that vaccine. It was a decade in the making. It is true. Moderna had been working on that mRNA technology for years. However, within 6 months, this promising technology became shots in arms. This is not a miracle. Miracles don't just happen. If the science is there, what's holding us back within the next 5 years to get to this functional cure? I asked the researchers, what's holding you back? If you could have anything in the world to make this work, what's holding you back? Money.
Yeah.
When they should have been in the lab working on the next iteration of their product, they were raising money in Saudi Arabia, in Tokyo, across the world. Why should they be putting as much effort into raising money as they are into the science? We can get there. And I just want to say, as a type 1 patient and a journalist, the last thing I want to do is sell false hope. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't do it to our community. I just wouldn't.
Can you tell me a little bit about some of the people that we're going to see? You mentioned the first patient, and the emotion of that. Obviously, I don't want you to give everything away, but can you tell us a little bit about the people that you follow? Right back to Lisa answering my question. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Afrezza. And when it comes right down to it, there hasn't been a lot of innovation for insulin. Sure, there are different brands, but nothing really unique when it comes to insulin delivery, except for Afrezza. Afrezza is unique because it is the only ultra-rapid acting inhaled insulin available. It starts working quickly without the need for injections at mealtime. Once you breathe Afrezza into your lungs using the inhaler, Insulin appears in your bloodstream in less than a minute, and it may start reducing blood sugar in about 12 minutes. Find out more and see if Afrezza is right for you. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Afrezza logo. Afrezza can cause serious side effects, including sudden lung problems and low potassium, and is not for patients with chronic lung disease, such as asthma or COPD, or for patients allergic to insulin. Tell your doctor if you ever smoked, have ever had kidney or liver problems, a history of lung cancer, or if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. Most common side effects are low blood sugar, cough, and sore throat. Severe low blood sugar can be fatal. Do not replace long-acting insulin with Afrezza. Afrezza is not for use to treat diabetic ketoacidosis. Please see full prescribing information, including boxed warning, medication guide, and instructions for use on afrezza.com/safety. Now back to Lisa telling us a little bit about the people featured in the documentary.
They are two extraordinary individuals, Greg Romero and Marin Badger. They were patient 1 and 2 at the University of Minnesota. I met them when they were thinking about doing this clinical trial. I scouted, I met them without filming, but I didn't really know what it was going to be like hanging out with them for like a year and a half. I had no idea. Then when we did start filming and I got to know them better, I was really in awe of what they were doing, going in for multiple surgeries within 6 months, for implants of the device, for explants of the device. I saw them have to weather a lot. And
let me just jump in real quick, because one of the things that I didn't realize, and I saw this, I think, in one of the trailers, they had to put the device in and then take it out, not because it needed to come out, right? Just as part of the trial. So it was more than would have been normally necessary.
They needed to explant the device, study it, and see how the cells were surviving. It was always part of the protocol. If when this works, the device would be implanted and stay in for as long as the cells keep producing insulin. They hypothesized that it could be a year. I can't guess on that one.
But part of the testing I meant for these individuals is that, in other words, let's say it was a year that they would keep it in somebody. These folks did not have it in for a year. They had to have it in for much less so they could keep checking it.
Yes, exactly. So I think they had surgeries once every 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
To remove the pod. Mm-hmm.
Wow. You don't think about that. We always thank people who go through clinical trials and we say, wow, it's inconvenient, or thanks for your time, or filling out the survey. But this is, I'm not sure what I expected, but it's just above and beyond. And it explains what you had mentioned earlier about the emotion of it all.
It is above and beyond. And I just want to share one thing that really moved me is when we've shown it to ViSight also a few times. And I mean, we had final say and the like, but certainly it was important that they see the film. And the chief scientific officer at the end of the film was crying because he didn't really understand what the patients were going through. And it is amazing. And we are so grateful. We should all be very grateful for what they do. And in fact, for what all clinical trial participants do.
I don't know if you can tell us, again, we don't want to ruin the ending of the documentary. Are these two folks currently still using the device? Are they allowed to?
They are not. They had the devices removed within a year of the implantation, which was between 2018 and 2019. They weren't working well enough to keep the devices in their bodies. And at that point, immunosuppressant drugs were also being taken. And you have to do your risk-benefit analysis. Like if it's not working, then we should remove them and then you can go off the immunosuppressant drugs.
When does the documentary end in terms of ViaSight's development? Because they've announced a few new things just in the last couple of months.
I have changed that final title card. I can't tell you how many times. That tax card is the bane of my existence. And yet it's a beautiful part of the existence because I'm sharing good news in that final card. Where they're at is they are still testing the device in the iteration that you see in the film. Perhaps more excitingly, they're working with something called PEC-QT, which is a collaboration they're doing with CRISPR, the gene editing company, because they've gene edited their stem cell line to not be rejected by the body. So essentially, the stem cells are invisible to the body because they've been gene edited with CRISPR technology to do so. That means no anti-rejection drugs are needed. This is very, very exciting.
And as you listen, we did, as I mentioned, we interviewed ViaCyte, and I'm going to link that up just a couple of weeks ago. I'll link up that interview. I really would urge you to go back and listen. There's a transcript there as well. If you just want to read it and then continue to listen to this one, because there's just so much information about the science and how they're addressing this. But Lisa, when you started this, I'm curious, I guess what I want to ask is how people look at this. I mean, it's been a long time. It's 6 years. The way people talk about this as a possibility really seems to have changed. Have the scientists that you've talked to, have they changed? Like how they feel about it, how they feel about the viability?
It's an excellent question. Their feelings have only changed because the science is working. They are researchers. They look at the data and it's all data driven. Are they more hopeful? I believe so, yes. At the same time, at the beginning of the trial, the ViaCyte team thought that the cells would be working within 3 months and they'd be done the clinical trial in 2 years. A breakthrough product like this that's programming stem cells, put them in a credit card device. I mean, this takes time. This is not something that is you're not just taking a pill. But yes, you're asking about the scientists. Do they feel differently? I think they feel buoyed. I think that knowing the success that Vertex is having is really good. And Cernova, as you point out, in Canada. So there are different labs that are showing success with this very technology. And that is actually lifting everybody up.
I'm curious why you stopped the documentary at this point, right? I mean, the happy ending, the big happy ending isn't there yet. And I know a documentary can't go on forever, but why did you stop now?
The story needed to be told. I couldn't sit on this film any longer. I needed to get this film done and out there because people are dying from this disease. They may not be dying as quickly in developed countries, but people are dying en masse. And I couldn't sit on this film that is not just about the science, it's about the disease. And it's about getting more dollars towards cure research. The science is going to be there and it's incremental. I felt that we were at a good point to stop and get this message out there.
Are you tempted to dive back in? Do you think there'll be a follow-up?
I'll do a short film. I'll do a sequel. Yeah.
I'd love to see that. How are you doing? You were diagnosed with type 1 when you were going off to college, right?
Exactly. I was in my 3rd year of college.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of silly to ask somebody with type 1 how they're doing. I get asked that about my son all the time. And it's like, still has it, right? Doing fine. What are you going to do?
I'm doing okay. I think it's harder to control the longer I've had it. I'm showing the long-term complications. I haven't always been in the tightest control. And I do have retinopathy and not enough for laser yet, laser, I guess. And I also have some peripheral neuropathy that I'm dealing with in my legs. You know what? It is so ingrained in my existence that sometimes it's hard to be objective about how am I doing. Hey, right now at 12:30 or what time is it? 10 a.m. In LA. Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing fine. Didn't have a hypo this morning. I'm doing well.
Yeah. I always joke, I'm not sure that's the right word, that when I talk to people who are outside the diabetes community, it's like, he's fine, we're fine, it's fine. And then when you're in the community, it's like, oh, let me tell you about this hypo I had this morning or this crazy high that wouldn't come down in the teenage years. And, then you can really talk about it.
Right. And that look you get when you meet someone and you see their pump on their arm or you see their Dexcom and it's like this knowing glance of, you get it.
During this time of being with these researchers, did you try to get into the trial? I mean, I don't even know if that was a possibility for you, but did it go through your head like, well, I'm here?
It went through my head for about a minute. And not because I was fearful. It was because I knew I couldn't do the trial and film.
Yeah.
It was already very intense, the filming process. So I needed to be behind the camera, not in front for the clinical trial.
Knowing that the best outcome ever could be, you're there with the camera and everybody's cured and they're rolling out next week and, it's going to be great. And that didn't happen. Are you satisfied? Are you happy with the film itself? I mean, I got to tell you, the trailer made me cry. I mean, I'm curious, like all of that hard work, are you far enough away from it yet that you can really look back and even answer that question?
I am not far enough away from it yet. I hope we have a premiere in New York on Thursday with 350 people in a movie theater. That will be the litmus test for me that we did it. I don't know. I honestly don't know yet. I think so. I hope so. But let's see how it plays in front of a live audience.
one of the things I noticed on the website is that people can ask to host their own screening.
Yes, absolutely. And you can host your own screening, and you can learn how by going to our website, thehumantrial.com. We have a very good educational partner who can walk you through how a community screening might work for you. It could be shown in your living room to 10 people who you think should know about this film. It could be shown at your clinic. It could be shown at your business. Anyone who needs to know about this disease and how there is a potential for it to be cured should see this film. You have a university class that you want to show it at. The sky's the limit. And we can help you with an educational toolkit. 45-page educational toolkit has been created. We can share resources with you, and we'll work with you to show it to your worlds.
Before I let you go, I'm curious. I can't imagine that this didn't affect you in some way, obviously being so close to it. When I've talked to a couple of documentary filmmakers, even if they aren't personally involved in the process, they learn something, they grow, they change in some way. Again, you may not be far enough away from it yet. Did you feel like you have changed in some way relative to type 1 diabetes because of your experience? It's been 8 years.
I think I've changed profoundly. I think I need some more contemplative time to come up with a really good answer for you, but I feel differently. I feel more hopeful. I feel more responsibility to the people in this world who have diabetes. I feel like I am a vessel right now to getting the word out. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
That is wonderful. Well, listen, I love your prediction of 5 years. We talked 6 years ago, so let's make a date. If it all works out, we'll circle back. We'll talk about your short celebratory film in 5 years.
Check in with me in 2 years.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm so excited for the launch of the film. I appreciate you coming back on, and all the best.
Thank you so much, Stacey. I look forward to seeing you at one of the screenings.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Lots more information at diabetes-connections.com, including the link to the trailer that I played at the beginning of the show and my interview with Lisa back in 2016. And of course, how you can do your own screening and all of the info on the film itself. Coming up, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the next couple of weeks. We've got some housekeeping issues and another book announcement. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. And we've been using the Dexcom system since Benny was 9. We started with Dexcom back in 2013, and the system just keeps getting better. The Dexcom G6 is FDA permitted for no finger sticks for calibration and diabetes treatment decisions. You can share with up to 10 people from your smart device. The G6 has 10-day sensor wear, and the applicator, it's so easy. I don't think I've done one insertion since we got it. In fact, I know I haven't, because Benny does them all himself. He's a busy kid, and knowing he can just take a quick glance at his blood glucose numbers to make better treatment decisions is reassuring. Of course, we still love the alerts and alarms and that we can set them how we want. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions. To learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. A couple of quick notes, some things I want you to be aware of. We will have a newscast this week. I'm still evaluating how In the News is going to look going forward. The audio episodes are really popular, which is great. I enjoyed doing the video. I'm not quite sure I'm going to continue doing video, though. It's a lot of work, and I'm not sure the demand is there. I think the audio is kind of our sweet spot. So we'll see. If you really love the video, let me know. I was doing it live on Facebook and Instagram for a while. I did get some great feedback on that, so I'd love to hear from you if it's something you want to hear more about. We will not have an In the News the week of July 4th. I will have a regular long-format interview episode, but no Friday episode that week because I will be at Friends for Life. I've tried to do episodes from there before, and it is a disaster. It is too bananas there. I will reserve the right to do some live stuff on social media. I really hope that I can do that. I plan on it. And we may have a bonus episode from there. So please follow me on social media. All the links are diabetes-connections.com. Or jump in the Facebook group. That's probably the best way to do it. Diabetes Connections, the group. Also want to let you know, watch in the group because our 500th episode is coming up in August. We have some fun stuff planned for that, and I'm hoping to be able to give away some prizes and have a little bit of a celebration for that milestone. And I promise this will not become the Stacey Book Podcast. But we are going to start pre-sales of the second World's Worst Diabetes Mom book at Friends for Life. It will be the lowest price the book will ever be available for. This is exactly what we did in 2019 with the first book, and it worked out really well. You don't have to be at Friends for Life to be part of the pre-sales. So if you are interested in that, again, just watch on social media. I may put out a quick little tiny bonus episode just to make sure that podcast folks hear it too. Again, it'll be the lowest price. You won't get the book until the fall when it actually comes out, but you can buy it in the summertime and save a lot of money. And if you're going to be at Friends for Life, just come by and say hi. I'm so excited. I think my table's right up front this year. I'm going to be there all week long. Really looking forward to it. I understand it could be the biggest one they've ever had in terms of numbers of people. So if you're going, make sure you bring comfortable shoes and a sweater because that conference hall is freezing cold, even though it is Orlando in July. Ugh. All right. Thank you to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.